Hey everybody, Jeff Harmon here with the Photo Taco Podcast in the Improved Photography Network. In this video, I want to show you how I would edit some photos taken by a listener of the Improved Photography Podcast. She posted to the Improved Photography Podcast Facebook group a photo she'd taken of a forest where there was a very dark foreground and a very bright sky background. And she wasn't really happy with how the photo turned out for her, and she was asking for some help. I offered to, if she'd send me the raw files, run through how I would edit it in Lightroom, and that's what I'm going to do here in this video. Now, this doesn't mean that this is the only way to process this photo. It's not even probably something I would process exactly the same way twice, in fact. So I'm just going to go through a rough edit of how it is I would do this, and I'm going to try to explain the rationale behind why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So hopefully you find it helpful. Let's head over into Lightroom. Okay, so here we are inside a Lightroom now, and I'm going to show you how I would go through attacking the challenge at hand to capture this scene and process it. All right, so it looks like Paula took out her Canon camera. She had her Canon 24-70. She was at 24 millimeters. Tell all of that from the metadata here that's inside the file. And she shot one of the forest floor. Then she went up to the sky and maybe thought, oh, I'm worried I don't have enough color in the sky. And so she lowered the exposure. And then she came to this as her result. This is where she got to. Not a terrible process by any stretch, Paula. This is a very common way that I've seen a lot of people, especially when you first start with Lightroom. The thing she was most concerned about is this area right up here. There's this banding that's going on, or the fringing is what it's called. Chromatic aberration looks like that, and that's what she wanted to get rid of. That's what she specifically asked about. But overall, it has a very HDR feel, maybe a little bit over the top HDR. The shadows and the highlights are not separated enough. They're too close together. The whole scene is not got enough contrast. Some people call it flat look. It looks very HDR. So we're going to see if we can get a little more natural result by doing some processing here with these photos. And we could try to use HDR to merge these two. We could also try just merging these two in a panorama and see if we can bring back the highlights. What I'm going to try to do is just match this. We're going to see if there's enough information in the shadows of this capture to match the things here, and see if we can use those two to do a panorama merge. Now, I should mention this is the latest version of Lightroom as of June 2017, and so I believe it's Lightroom 2015.10 that I'm on. And so some of the features that I'm using here may not be available to everybody. I think Paula said she's using Lightroom 5.7, and so you may not have some of the merge features I'm about to use, but if you don't, you can just go into Photoshop for that part, and which I believe Paula said she did. She went into Photoshop to do the merge, and that's just fine. But I can do it all from Lightroom in the latest version, so I'm going to. All right, so what we need to do we need to try to match settings. So if I click on, sorry, not Shift, Control, I need Control, and I'm going to click on both of these, and we can try something that's going to match the exposure. If you go to Settings and you go to Match Total Exposures right here, you can see if that'll do it. And sure enough, it looks like it may have done that. We matched the total exposure between the two. Now, just to make sure, what I can do is I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to set it as the reference photo, and then I'm going to hit this RA button right there so we can look at the two. And yeah, it looks close enough. We should be able to merge these two guys together. So we're going to give that a go. We're going to try that out. The other thing, well, we know that the sky's not overexposed. It was a darker exposure. So between those two, we're looking pretty good. The other thing before I get into doing the merge is I want to make sure I apply my lens corrections. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go to Profile, I'm going to do the Remove Chromatic Aberration anyway and enable Profile Correction, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go switch over to the other one and make sure I do the same thing. All right, just apply that. We could do other edits too. You can do them individually. A whole bunch of these edits do survive the Panorama Merge in Lightroom. A whole bunch of them do. Stuff like crop doesn't. There's a few things that don't, but we're going to get a merged DNG raw file at the end of the panorama. So I don't want to do any more edits right now than I have to. And so I think I'm ready. I have the exposures matched. I've applied lens corrections to both. So now I'm going to right click on the photos and I'm going to say photo merge and I'm going to do Panorama. And Lightroom's going to think about it for a second, pulling up the raw files. That's the speed of this is going to depend based on how fast your computer is and what you have there, how many photos there are, how big they are, and so on. Now we have to decide a couple of things, three different things about how this is going to be merged here in Lightroom. You got to decide the projection, spherical, cylindrical, perspective. And we're not going to go through the details about what that is, but just experimenting with them, especially when it's only 2 files and it's not too big a deal, to just try it out. And I'm going to take off auto crop. That must have been there from the last time I used this. And I don't want boundary warp yet. I just want to try to see the effect of the projection, how it is that they're going to, that Lightroom is going to glue these files together and try to do a perspective change on them. All right, so perspective actually looks pretty good. It's not too bad. It's pretty straight up and down. Let's go to cylindrical. And yeah, it really stretched it. Really stretched it. And it made this so much bigger than that. That's not really the look we want. Spherical's closer. We can try spherical. Let's see what happens if I do boundary warp. And I just want to see as I stretch it, and especially as I go to 100%, the problem is we got a lot of trees that are bent in this area. They're really bent right here, and I don't like that. So you could dial it back some. We could go, I don't know, let's try, where does it really start bending? Well, let's put it on auto crop. And so it's going to take away the white, and I can just kind of see the effect. And this is really nice with this few files to see how it's looking. And yeah, I think we could live with that, but let's just try on perspective. I want to see how it's looking with perspective. Oh, and I like this much better. I like perspective for this particular crop much better. We're getting more of the trees in the scene. Yeah, I'm liking that. They're staying straight pretty well. And I think maybe about right there, right at about 64, 65, something like that. That looks pretty good. I think we have a good photo merge there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit merge. Photoshop or Lightroom's going to think about it for just a second while it's creating the panorama. You can see it up there. And when it's done, then I'll be able to go click on it. There it comes in. It's doing the crop, and we have our pano. All right, beautiful. Look at that. That's very nice. Now, the first thing I like is that this is darker than we had in the original. That's one of the things I really wanted. When I planned how I'm going to do this photo process, one of the things that you probably really liked, Paul, as you were doing it was the sun right here. Even better would have been if you got a starburst, probably. Maybe you were trying for that. I don't know. But that would have been, that's a nice effect. It's just kind of hidden in this photo. It's not really there. But I like the way that the shadow looks on the floor right now. But let's just take it up a little bit and see what happens if we do that. If we change the exposure, I'm going to click these on for right now because I want to see what's being clipped. And I'm okay with some pure white. Wherever it's red is pure white. Wherever it's blue is pure black. It means there's just no detail in there. It is pure white, pure black. And I'm okay. Look, these are clouds that are back there. They're okay to be pure white. And this is deep, dark shadows, and it's okay to be pure black. We want to get as much contrast as we can in our scene. In fact, we may just add some contrast. Just to add a little bit. I'm going to go a +10. It's not a whole lot. And let's try, I want to bring down the highlights. And there we go. So now all the highlights are in. No problem right there. If we keep going, you can see we get more of the blue in the sky until it looks just weird again. And we get this fringing certainly in here, but we get some in here too. And so we don't want to go all the way. Absolutely don't want to go all the way. So I'm going to try lowering the highlights to maybe about half. And then we can even try raising the whites again. So the white is going up, and you can see that blue is not being tremendously impacted over there on the left. But the whites of the clouds, I'm okay with them going pure white. It's fine. So I have the whites. Now the blacks, let's make those shadows really truly black down there. You don't want to go all the way here. That's too much. But I definitely want the shadows to be of the plants to be pure black, especially with an effect we're going to add towards the end. All right, so global adjustments of those kinds of things, that's looking pretty good. I kind of like where we're at. Let's let's play with the exposure. I'm a little, well, we're gonna change this independently in just a moment. Let's add some clarity, and there's some landscape photographers who just despise clarity, and you can take it all the way to the end and you can see the impact. It's just not good. So you can dial it down, and you know, this is kind of neat, but if this was the focus and I wanted to make it bright and everything, then maybe I would consider this much clarity. But it's not the focus. That's not what I want to focus on. So I'm only going to put about a 15 clarity, and it's not hugely visible, but you can see as I go up and down, up and down. It just makes a little bit more, a little bit different type of contrast be added. It's finding some edges. All right, let's play with saturation too. Let's just see what happens. And as I increase the saturation, I love what it's doing down here. I like that orange showing through, the yellow and orange, but I don't like what it's doing here. Let's zoom in to see that. You see the red banding that's happening around the tree? I don't like that red banding. Let's even zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to go to a 3:1, and then I'm going to come down here to the tool on lens corrections, and we're going to go to the manual part, and I'm going to grab the dropper, and I'm going to put I'm going to try to do it right like that. Oh, that's not a good area. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get it. I want Lightroom to try to figure out when there's an edge, like there's this fringing happening. And all right, it looks like we got some. It dialed in, it narrowed to this green hue, which is very orange and yellow, and it put in an amount of 6. If we keep increasing the amount, you can see it doesn't really change a whole lot. But if I take it off, you can see, especially over in this area, I'm going to put that dropper back, in this area, you can see where it is that banding's there, and then it kind of disappears. I don't want to have it be completely gone out of the leaves, because some of that would look that way. All right, so come back. It's still kind of visible, and let's go back up to the basic panel, and let's play around with that saturation. So we're all the way at 28 on saturation. That might be a little too much. Let's try a 15. I love 15s in Lightroom. I don't know. It's just like enough of an effect to make a difference. And okay, so there we are. We got the blue of the sky. We're gonna go change some more of that in a second. We got some orange. Let's take a look at before and after. So I've added some saturation. I've decreased the highlights. All right, I like where that's at. Okay, let's keep going down here. So next I'm gonna visit the HSL panel. I love the HSL panel, especially for landscape photography. And one of the things we want to do is look at the blue. So if we saturate the blue more, that's way too much, and it's almost looking like where Paula ended up in her version of the photo. You have all that blue up here in the branches that looks funny. We certainly don't want to go that far, but we want that blue to kind of pop for sure. But I don't want to go overboard on it. It can be really easy. So I'm just going to do a little tiny bit more blue saturation up there, especially because I think I'm gonna add some yellow tone to the top part, and so I need a little extra blue to counterbalance that and keep the blue that's there. The luminance, you can really make the sky brighter, and it has a little bit different effect than the saturation, but you can get the blues to be darker by changing the brightness of the tones that are blues too. So I'm just gonna put a little tiny bit of that in. Again, I'm adding some yellow in a moment, and I want to counterbalance that. All right, so let's also play around with the saturation of the yellows, because we want some yellow in our photo here. And changing the yellow itself doesn't do a ton. There's not a whole lot of yellow in the photo. It's a lot more orange, it looks like, based on how I'm seeing the saturation change. So we can go pretty high on the yellow. I'm gonna just try it right there and see if we do the orange. Now we get that banding, or we can see up in here, we can see too much orange. So we certainly don't want 100%. I'm going to try it at 25. I'm going to try adding just enough orange to it. Let's take a look at before and after. Now I want to go over here into history, and I want to change it just before I did the orange, and right after the saturation maybe. Let's just see what that looks like. So now I can go before and after. And yeah, it's not too extreme. That's what I want to validate, is it's not so extreme that it looks really fake, but I'm bringing out those colors. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I like that. We can play around with the orange luminance too. If you go brighter, then it makes just that part brighter, and that's not a bad effect actually, to kind of make it brighter. In fact, if we make it brighter and then we go back to saturation, and just to see the effect, let's see what happens if I now bring more orange in again. And let's see how that looks. Okay, so I really kind of like, it's emphasizing that sunset, bringing more orange into the clouds. I like how that's where that's going. All right, so I'm gonna leave that for right now. We may have to come back to it. We may decide it's over the top and too much, but I'm gonna do that. Let's do some sharpening. Let's do some overall sharpening, and I think we need to perhaps, you know what? Let's do, before we do the sharpening, I want to be able to see what I'm sharpening better. This looks like it might be pretty good on the forest floor here, but I'm going to just add a graduated filter, and I'm going to stretch up. I'm holding the shift key to make it nice and straight as I do it, nice and flat. And what this is going to do is make it so that you get an effect where it's 100%, it's affecting the photo 100% here, right up to this line. And then it's going to go from 100% to 50% to 0 right here. A nice smooth transition between those, nice gradient transition between those. I want the full effect here, but I want it to have a smooth transition there, and maybe just start like at the bottom of that tree. There's a nice visual indicator there for it to start transition, and I don't want it to go past the horizon on my effect. Now I can change things, like if it's too dark, if I'm arrived at a too dark place, maybe we can take up the shadows just a little bit. And you know, that might be okay to do. I might have gone a little overboard on the shadows before. I'm gonna go about right there. We're gonna try that out. We can change just the whites, and I really kind of want to, let's change the highlights down. I don't want the highlights to really show, but I kind of want those, well, maybe, again, the emphasis of this photo is going to be the sun in the middle, in the thirds there, right here. That's going to be the emphasis. I don't really want the forest floor to be an emphasis, so I think I'm going to change the whites there, like that. And now let's see. So I'm going to, maybe I'll take a little bit of exposure. Well, we did the shadows, didn't we? We raised the shadows. Okay, I think we're good. I think that's okay. I want to take down the exposure just a touch. So I'm going to go I'm going to go to like 18 there. We're going to see how that looks at the end. We're going to see how that is. We're going to affect this area a little bit more, but I really like this area being pretty dark. Okay, so now let's go change. We're going to add another gradient filter, and I'm going to stretch it from here down, holding down shift to get a straight gradient filter. And I want to have it go like that. And let's I don't want it to affect where the sun is at all. I want the 100% effect here. Okay, now we have our gradient we can do on the top part, and I want to add a little yellow. I want to make it look more like a sunset. Yeah, I love it. I love adding that that yellow in. Okay, and so now we have a much bigger emphasis. You're going to have more of a yellow tone up here and a blue tone down here. In fact, while we're thinking about it, I'm going to switch to this gradient. I don't want the saturation. I don't want this massive green overtone to be here. So I'm going to lower the saturation of that green. I'm going to take it down maybe a -40 or so. And let's increase the shadows a little bit more. Well, it's affecting, yeah, I don't want it there. I'm going to do the shadows on the other side. Okay, so yeah. All right, that's good. Maybe what we can do is turn it off and I can just do the shadows overall. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. I want it to be darker down here, going to brighter up here. And that seems about perfect right there now. That seems pretty good. And we got our bright sky. I love it. That's great. Okay, and it doesn't really look like it's got a ton of fringing. You have some yellowness in here, but that's because of the sun reaching the clouds. And that's all right. Okay, so I like where we're at there. Let's go back to our sky gradient filter and just see what else we want to play with. So we brought in some yellow. You can go over the top on the yellow, obviously. We don't want to go that far. So I really like the 20. I like about the 20 range on the yellow. We could play around with decreasing the highlights, and if they weren't too bright, if they were too bright. But I kind of like where they were at. I don't think we need to change any of the highlights. We can play with the shadows. We can play with the whites. Let's play with the shadows and just see what that does. Maybe we want the shadows to end up being just a touch brighter on the top and then on the bottom. So yeah, let's take the shadows up just a little bit there. That works for me. We can play with the whites a little too. How does increasing the whites look? We've got a nice sun there. If we increase the whites, it gets brighter. I don't think we want to touch the whites. Yeah, let's leave the blacks alone. We could add some saturation up to the top if that doesn't affect the bottom. I don't think we want to do that. I think we're good on the two gradients now. And I like where that's at. Okay, now that we have that done, I think I'll be able to see what I want to see for the sharpening. And I'm going to go back over here to 1:1 instead of 3:1 so we can see a range of things. We have some sky back here. We have the trees. We have a lot to look at while we do the sharpening. So I'm going to go sharpening, and I'm going to shoot for an 85% on the sharpening. It's kind of where I start on landscapes. That's what I'm looking at. And it's done. It's not tuned yet, so you don't judge it yet based on that. But I want to take the radius. And in general with landscape, the direction to go is on the left side of the scale. So this is already a decent spot on most landscapes. And you can go, what we want to avoid, as I go to the right, you can see it really is going to make the detail pop, but it also adds these massive halos around the branches and the leaves. And we don't want those halos. It tends to make it look really funny with those halos. So we want no halos, but this is perhaps too far. And so I'm gonna go 0.8. It's a little change in the radius, not much. I'm just trying stuff out, see how it looks. And then I'm gonna go to the detail, and we can go to the right on the detail. And all the way is probably too far. You're gonna get pixelation. It's gonna look crunchy is the term I've heard used a lot, and I like that term. But I kind of like it. I definitely like it increased, and maybe we can go all the way to 70. We're gonna try it there. Now the last one is mask, and that's where as you go to the right, what's in white will be sharpened, and what's in black will be left alone. And what I really want to do is just make it right to the point where the sky is not being sharpened and everything else is. So I want to zoom in right here. Let's take a look at the masking. And I can see there's a little bit in the sky that's being sharpened, and I don't want it to be sharpened. So keep going to the right. I'm going to end up right there. And there we go. Now I've done my sharpening, and hopefully that's going to be good enough. It's going to look good. Okay, so overall, let's take a look at before and after. Whoops. Oh, I deleted my photo. I hit the wrong key. All right, don't hit backspace. Here's before, here's after. Before, after, before, after. And so I really love the separation that's making. I love the way that's looking, but it's not drawing the attention to the sunset yet. I think my sky is too bright. I want to change that. Now that I go before and after, which is why it's a good exercise to go through, I think my sky is too bright. So I want to lower it because I have a plan of how I'm going to do a sunrise in a little bit here. All right, so now that I've changed it, let's go before and after again. Okay, I like that a little better. Not quite as bright right there. What I want to do is emphasize the sun right here. I want to make that really shine. So I'm going to grab a radial filter, and I'm going to hold down my shift key so it'll be a perfect circle, and I'm going to draw a circle out. And I want it to just barely go on the forest floor right here. And I have a plan about how I'm going to go from there. Okay, so we're going to play around with some of these things. First, we need to invert the mask so it's only on the inside and not on the outside. And I'm going to change, we're going to add some exposure. We're going to add quite a bit of exposure. Let's go 1 full stop of exposure. I'm going to reduce the contrast a little, not a lot. I'm going to increase the highlights and something like that. I'm going to increase the shadows. I don't want to go too far. I'm trying to make it look like the sun was more prominent than it was. And I think I can go actually all the way up on the highlights and the whites. And we have a nice, I think maybe that's too much. I'm gonna go to half a stop on the exposure. Okay, and maybe a little minus clarity. And let's see what the haze does if I go, that adds a little bit of white light to it, which is not bad. I don't mind having a little bit of white light in there. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's see how that looks. So does that look fairly natural for the sun to come through? I think it does. I think that's not too bad. Yeah, I like that. Let's just do before I added the radial filter. I'm going to set that as the history setting to before. I'm going to go before and adding in that radial filter. Okay, not bad. I kind of like it. What's not good though, if we come in here, these trees. So first of all, they're really noisy now because we've increased the exposure on what was really shaded trees, really high shadows. So I don't like the noise, which means another thing I want to edit. I'm going to click on that, click on my button. I want to add in some noise reduction. So I'm going to go this way. You can go too far and make them look like they're plastic. We don't want that. I worked so hard on all that sharpening. So now something like this, somewhere in there. Maybe a 29 application of it. Okay, the other thing though is the way that this is coming through, the trees would not look this way. They would not, the backside of that tree would have shade, would be shadowed. It would be coming around the edges. And in fact, this side of this tree would be brighter than this side of this tree. So what I want to do is try to remove the filter right there. So to do that, I'm going to click on the filter. I'm going to start at the top. So I need to be able to see the top part of the filter. And I'm going to go to the brush. And then I'm going to hit Alt, hold down Alt, so that I'm going to be erasing the filter. Erasing where the filter is. Wherever I brush is going to erase the filter. I'm going to size my brush. I like having a flow of about 30, so it doesn't instantly just erase. It kind of slowly erases. The flow is 30. A feather of 100 is good. Okay, so now I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to, again, the right edge of that tree would be brighter than than the other side, according to the perspective that I have here. So there we go. Now I kind of have the backside of that tree. Same here. Backside of this tree would be darker. It wouldn't have that full impact of that filter. All right. So you can see what I'm getting at, and hopefully you can see how that already looks more natural than it did with the filter applied to the whole thing. This is kind of key to making that sun look more prominent, catch the eye, draw the eye, without having the effect look so fake. Now this side, it's on the other side of the tree, so I want to kind of miss, if I'm going to miss, on the right hand side of the tree as I'm erasing, because the left hand side would need to be brighter. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're really zoomed in right now, so you can sort of go fairly fast and just erase part of the tree. Make it so that the filter's not fully affecting the tree. And then right here, I want to try to stay in the middle because it's pretty close to the middle of that sun, but it needs to not have the full effect of the filter on the tree. especially when it's in that circle. It just doesn't look that way in real life. Okay, so we got that. I'm going to go in here. Got this. And, you know, some of this would be much easier to do in Photoshop if I used layer masking. Then I could probably do this much faster and maybe even get a more realistic result. But the goal here was just to use Lightroom. That's what we wanted to do. Okay, so some of these trees, just take off the effect. All right, now we're only seeing the top half of that circle. So I'm pressing the space bar to get a hand, the hand icon. And I got to go back to holding down Alt, and I've got to do these trees some more right here. Make sure we get them all the way down and up and down. All right, so like this. Yeah, it's looking great. I love the effect. I love how it's coming out here. It's beautiful. Okay, these little tiny skinny trees we don't need to do much with, because they would actually get pretty enveloped in the sun. Okay, just do a little bit here. All right, make sure this one's good. I'm going to increase my brush size a little. Back side of that tree, like that. Erasing that. We got some more work to do right here. We've exposed more area as we moved around on the zoom. All right, go here. Another thing that really helps with this step, or in this type of post-processing, is using a tablet, which I'm not currently doing. I'm using a mouse, but that would really help too. Okay, I got that. I'm going to decrease my brush size. If your computer is not fast enough, this can be really tough. I use a custom-built PC to keep up with me, and you know, lots of Apples can do great too, but that can be a challenge if you're trying to follow these same kinds of steps and it's not working like you see it working here. Then you might need to do something with your computer. All right, we're getting close, getting really, really close. Let's see, do some of this one. Not sure I really got him before. And we got to definitely do some more over here. Remember that it's on the other side of the tree. Yeah, so we're just kind of making up our own thing here. Okay, go down in brush size. Get the tree. And if you, one of the challenges of doing this in Lightroom is if you make a mistake on the filter, you don't have a good way of like going back on your filters. You got your undo button, so there is that, but you don't have a really stellar way to deal with filling the filter back in with the gradient that you had. That's where an advantage of layer masking is, because you don't actually touch the gradient. So Photoshop has a big advantage in this area for sure. But it's possible, and not too bad to do this in Lightroom, which is what we're doing right now. So as you can see, I'm getting to the bottom here. Now, I don't want to do the forest floor because the sunlight should really hit that forest floor, right? That's normal for it to hit the forest floor. So I don't want to do anything with the forest floor. I just want the trees to have this effect, and that'll make it look more consistent with how trees would look in a sunset. So go through here, go through here. Okay. And let's take a look at where we're at. So I'm going to hold down space bar, hit my mouse button, and Does that look pretty natural and normal now? You can see before and after. So the sun really has a much bigger impact. What I want to do though is it feels to me like it's kind of too big a burst. And the thing I can change is the feathering. So I'm going to change the feathering over so that it's not as huge an impact. There, something like that. Just feather it. There we go. All right, I kind of like that better. It's not as big a change, but boy, does it draw your eye right there to the sun. The problem is this is still too bright out here. I really want to emphasize this area. So I'm going to use a second radial filter. I'm going to get fairly close to the start of the first one. And I'm going to go hold down Shift and draw a circle. And I want to get to where I'm just barely affecting the bottom edge all the way. And I'm going to dial in some negative exposure outside of the circle. So we inverted the mask to make sure it was in. Now it's outside of the circle. And I don't want 0.5, a whole half of a stop is, well, that's not too bad. I kind of like how that's looking right there. And we can decrease the saturation a little to emphasize the inside, but we're still keeping the blue sky. Yeah, something like in there. Maybe a -20 in there. We could increase the noise reduction so that because we don't really want it to be super clear on the edge. So I'm going to just dial in a little bit of noise reduction on the edge here. And so we got the saturation down. I like that. That's great. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's see how that looks. So overall, I think we've got our blue sky. We've got a very noticeable sunset. We do have a little bit of fringing in here, but it's just because of the coloring, I think. It's not really because the edges are truly fringed. As we go in and look, it's not. So I'm pretty comfortable with how that went. Love how the vegetation here now is just adding information about the scene, but it's not the emphasis of the scene. The eye is being drawn right here. We got our trees blocked out very, very well so that you can see that. Looks nice and dreamy in there. I love it. If you want to look a little bit more dreamy in the middle where that sun is, let's zoom in so we can see the effect. What we can do is dial in some more negative clarity. We can really, and that just like, it makes it look more dreamy in the middle. And so I'm going to go 22. I'm going to try that. There we go. Let's see how that looks. Just adds to the dreaminess of the scene. All right. I really like that. I like how the eye is being drawn now to that part of the scene. Now overall, is it too dark? If it is, maybe a little. Let's just play with it. I'm kind of thinking, well, what if it's just a little bit brighter overall? So that's exposure. I want to affect everything at once. Let's take the exposure up just a touch. Yeah. All right. So I kind of like that better. It felt a little too dark before. So 0.25. Well, let's just to play with it. Let's take it up higher and see what it looks like. So yeah, I don't like that. That's what's too much. I want it to be a nice sunset fill. There. Let's try that. Let's take, I think that is where I would end up. Okay, so that's where I think I've got to stop right now, at least for this video, of how I would post-process these. Now let's compare it to what Paula had. So we're going to set this as the reference photo. So on the left is Paula's, on the right is what I had. Same shots, same things that are there, but you can see the difference in planning something and making sure that you're drawing the eye and the attention to the sunset. It really de-emphasized the color that we needed to bring up here, and it reduced the effect she was most worried about was never there because we used the frame that we did. And really beautiful scene. It's just a gorgeous scene. The only other thing I can think of doing now, because we're almost to a 1-to-1 ratio anyway, I would come in here and do that. So, and I don't mind cutting off this tree that's really bent over there, but I really want that sunrise to be right on the third line. And so I think that's good. And now it's perfect for Instagram, and they're nice to print that way too. And of course, if you wanted to do more of a computer desktop background, you can go 16:9 in the crop, and you can rotate it around, and then we could go grow it. We can just constrain to the image, and you could do like this, depending on what the emphasis is that you want to get, and get a nice crop, which still has plenty of resolution. These files are plenty big, so you can get a nice crop there, and that looks nice. But I really like the Instagram one. It just fits the scene. You get to see the entire scene that way. And so I really like the 1:1 crop ratio. And I'll go make the sun. Whoops. Gonna undo that. Okay. We want the sun. Oh, I gotta zoom down, go down just a touch. All right, right there. There we go. Now we got it. We got it all the way in there. Beautiful, beautiful scene. Wonderful shoot, Paula. This was a really great photo. All right, so that's it. That's where I'm gonna leave it today. Here, we'll put it on this as I go through the last part here. We'll go before and after. Okay, so if you liked this video, if you like this training, you need to check out my podcast. It's the Photo Taco Podcast, and you can get it by subscribing to the Improve Photography Network, which is the Improve Photography Podcast. There are 5 different podcasts that are on that network. And if you subscribe to the one podcast, Improve Photography, then you'll get all of them. And on every second Monday of the month is Photo Taco, where I outline lots of tips and tricks similar to this, but in audio format. I walk through the details of exactly what to do and where to go, and I hope that you'll go check that out. So subscribe to the Improve Photography Podcast, and you can go over to improvephotography.com or look up the Facebook group, which is how this whole thing got started for this training video. Paula was kind enough to post and ask for help on the Facebook group. That's go search for Improve Photography Podcast. I'm Jeff Harmon, and you're going to need to know a host in order to join that group. So the answer to that question is Jeff Harmon, Harmon, and you'll be able to join that group. It's lots of fun, and I hope you'll do that. So hope to see you there, and I hope this video was very helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.